You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe Venosa.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe Venosa, this week, and we have a special episode that is exclusively devoted to the issue of voting, and specifically voting in the city of Salisbury. So with me is Ms. Trish Melvin from Fruitland, and our old friend from Delmar, the voice of Open Agenda, Mr. Mike Goldberg. Hey, you've got the voice, you might as well own up to it. But thank you both for being here. So there has been, obviously, in the last few weeks, more and more intense discussion and frankly debate at City Council about the issue of ranked choice voting. We have covered it a little bit on the show, but we have heard recently that some facts have been brought to our attention about the actual voting rates and turnout in recent elections, as well as some controversies about a series of canned emails that have gone out by the hundreds to different council members.
When anything happens in the city and there's a definite divide on it, the council members get a lot of emails. And I appreciate these emails from all the members of the public, and whether you're for or against it, because it's not my decision to make that judgment call. You are entitled to your opinion. But I will ask you to do one thing, those of you that are here or in the public. Please stop with the canned emails. Please give your original thoughts when you have something to say, pro or con, about something, because they are far more valuable to me when I get a real feel for what you are sincerely feeling and not just passing on a canned email.
And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring our friend and good neighbor Joe Scafino on the show for the next segment, and he's going to sort of inform the public what he's found out, and sort of maybe talk about the implications of it in regards to what could happen with ranked choice voting. So, Mike, I'm wondering, could you stick around after Joe comes back? We'll bring you back on, and we'd like to get your thoughts, as well as Trish's, about sort of what this means. Is it a good idea, and does it actually have a future?
I can't find my car keys, so I have to stay.
All right. Well, I'll help you look after the show, but for now, we'll press onward bravely. Thank you. So stick around. We're going to be right back with our next segment of Open Agenda. We're going to have Joe Scafino on, and we will get into the issue of ranked choice voting in the city of Salisbury. Stick around. Welcome back to Open Agenda. So now in the House, we've got Salisbury resident, and I would argue one of the most civically active citizens in the city, Mr. Joe Scafino, fellow Staten Islander, back with us. And we, Trish, have, it seems, learned a lot of information in the last few days regarding not just the specifics on what the city intends to try to propose for ranked choice voting, but some of the concerns about it, and the logistics, and also if this is really warranted given the facts and the history. So, Joe, can you maybe explain for us what exactly you have uncovered, and maybe we can kind of broaden this out to the discussion that we touched upon in a previous episode?
Yeah. I've said before that this ranked choice voting, it's a solution in search of a problem. Now, apparently there are some canned emails being circulated by an organization. My wife got one of them, and a neighbor happened to show me one that was a little different. All right, and I just want to share some highlights. One of these emails is called "Strengthen Salisbury's Democracy with Real Election Reform." Now, they want majority elections, special elections for vacancies, which was the main gist of what council was supposed to talk. But then, in what I believe is absolutely aimed at the mayor's race and Mayor Taylor, they call for strong conflict of interest rules. Specifically, if an official owns rental properties that could benefit from city decisions, those assets should be put in a blind trust or sold. Now, again, there's been no conflict of interest with the mayor, not even suggested. And in the 2 years I've been observing City Council, the only conflict of interest was when past President Deshaun Doughty voted for the density increase, which was going to benefit his employer, Green Tree Housing.
Well, could I ask a question? Try to word this correctly, is there precedent in other municipal governments for having a kind of blind trust or some kind of check for an official that might own property?
No,
Has that?
no. It's for the president of the United States.
Okay.
Okay. I've never heard of it at this level. Okay.
And at the mayoral level, he's not able to recuse himself.
He doesn't vote on anything.
Okay. All right.
So, I mean, it's,
So it's a
again,
non-issue.
solution in
Okay.
search of a problem.
Got it.
But he could veto legislation, maybe, that he thought,
Yeah, theoretically.
or that anyone theoretically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess in principle, it's not necessarily a terrible idea. But to your point, the context of how it's being proposed now and what we know that has actually happened doesn't seem to jive so well.
No. Now, the second canned email that's going around says, fix Salisbury's broken election system. Over the past decade, multiple city elections have been decided by candidates who won with only a small share of the vote because the field was crowded. Well, that's a lie. So what I did, I went back to the 2023 election, the 2019 election, and the 2015 election, the past decade. Okay? And there were a number of races where there was only one candidate. A majority of races had two candidates. There were 3 or 4 that had 3 or 4 candidates. In 3 of those 4, the winning candidate had significantly more than 50% of the vote. And in one of them, the winner had 48%. So again, the only one that had a lower percent was this recent mayor's race, where he got, I think, 38%. Okay. So again, this is clearly aimed at the mayor. If that wasn't the situation, we wouldn't have ever heard of ranked choice voting.
So you're telling me and telling the viewers essentially that based on the data you found in terms of what we know about the last 10 years of elections, who has run, and the numbers, that realistically much of the argument that seems to be coming from these canned emails from, I guess, potential individuals or groups is really focused only on sort of sour grapes at the last mayoral election only, and that's being used as a pretext for this ranked choice voting proposal. Is that?
That's my take on this issue.
Okay.
There's only one race in this last couple elections would have applied. It was my race. It was the mayor's race. So the whole idea that you're propping this up is got one word, not sentiment, not constituent involvement. It's complete fiction, politics. But the fact that you're saying this like you're saying it like, oh, it's a lot of people, communities are using it, and I've heard from my constituencies. You and I both know that's not true. And I'm not trying to call you a liar. But I'm saying is, I've talked to intelligent people.
We're not gonna name
I talk to
call.
intelligent people every day. They don't even know what ranked choice voting is. So the idea that you have people calling you is it's utterly ridiculous. So let me just say it this way. The reason behind this is clearly politics, and you're trying to whip up people to support your cause that, it's silly. So
Just because it wasn't a public discussion, this was something I had brought to both the previous mayors when sitting down with them in meetings and asking and talking to them about things that I would like to see the city pursue.
the idea that when we went to districts, we can barely attract 2 people to a race. So the idea that you've been chasing ranked choice voting for the last 8 or 10 years, it's like a dog chasing a bumper. It's like, what the hell? What the hell are we doing?
All right,
But why would we need to do that?
I want to add, there was no identification of the organization that's spreading these canned emails.
Okay.
Now, I will speculate, based on the evidence, Councilwomen Blake and Gregory are the 2 that are pushing this ranked choice voting. Angela Blake, I understand, is a member of Sure Progress, and I strongly suspect that Sure Progress is behind these canned emails. And if I'm wrong, let's see them come out and say.
Well, and to the broader point, you can have as many canned emails as you want, but is it reflective of what the citizens actually want is the other question. And you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we have had several recent meetings where citizens in large numbers came out to address the appointment issue. And at the last city council meeting, at least 3 of the city council members, right?
Yes.
Councilwoman Holland, Councilwoman Jackson, and Councilwoman DeShiel, a majority, basically all said, both directly and indirectly, that their priorities are about what the citizens have alluded to, which is the appointment process, not the elections.
I have not heard anything about a problem with the elections and knew nothing about election reform until Councilwoman Gregory and Blake brought it up.
It was those two, Angela and Michelle, kept saying that people are calling them and suggesting it. And so I wanted to see how many people was contacting them to suggest it, because nobody's called you. No one's called me. Has anybody called you, Melissa? Nobody's called us. So I was kind of confused. So I said, let's do a survey and see how this is going to go.
Ever since I took the seat, what I heard from the community was there was a problem with the appointment process.
That's the one thing I was going to ask about. There was nothing on there.
I get that, but let me finish where I was going with it. So I've heard there's a problem with the appointment process, and now I'm hearing we're looking at a complete election reform. So I guess I'm very unclear, because the citizens that have reached out to me have only talked about the process for appointment. I have not heard the voters say there's a problem with the actual election itself. And I'm just unclear how we went from changing an appointment process to possibly an election, special election, to now we're bringing up all these groups are coming together and giving us information.
Is this a kind of Hail Mary pass by certain groups, perhaps, or individuals with these canned emails, knowing that at this point it doesn't look like their effort is going to have much traction?
That makes sense to me. I mean, Melissa Holland specifically said, I'm only hearing from my constituents about the appointment process.
Yeah.
I've heard nothing about this ranked choice voting.
Right.
April Jackson actually challenged Councilwoman Blake and Gregory, saying, I'm not getting any emails about it. Sharon's not getting any. And we just heard Melissa say she's not getting any. So where are these emails that you're getting?
Well, and maybe they're alluding to the canned emails then. Is that
That's a possibility, because at the time, nobody had received them
Okay.
that I know of.
Well, Trish, you don't exactly have a front row seat to the Salisbury City government circus because you live in Fruitland.
Yes.
But you have a good vantage point nevertheless. What do you think about all this in terms of not just the general proposal, because we have talked about ranked choice voting, the pros and cons sort of in principle, but what do you think about what Mr. Scafino here has brought up in regards to the patterns in the text and the specific criticisms, and then fact-checking those canned emails with the latest, with at least 10 years of election data?
What concerns me is, what is the voter turnout in Salisbury, percentage-wise?
I'll tell you, because I looked that up. I only did it for the 23 election. So in Salisbury, out of 17,000 eligible voters, 3,000, or I believe it was 18%.
Okay.
So, I mean... And
that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and I think a part of that is because we have a disproportionate number of rental properties. So renters aren't as committed to the local politics as actual homeowners.
Maybe they should be.
Well,
Yeah.
And are we really missing an opportunity then here to do something more important? Because it seems like, given those numbers, and I actually thought it was even lower than it. For some reason, I thought 16.9% was the rate at the last election. Maybe I'm obviously wrong.
Wow,
based on what you
17
said.
or 18 is pretty close to 16.
Listen.
It's pitiful.
If I had a student who had that on an exam, they would fail either way. That's not a good number.
Okay.
But are we missing an opportunity here to actually address not just the appointment process, which people have brought up, because that did engender a lot of civic interest.
Yes.
Especially through Jermichael Mitchell's and Natalie St. Fard's call to action and sort of
Absolutely.
bringing. But is the city government actually missing an opportunity to maybe have a bigger conversation about how do we make voting more attractive, more? Yeah, I'm sorry.
should,
Yeah.
I'm afraid that ranked choice voting would do the opposite. So I don't even really understand it. And I feel it would be cruel to impose this upon senior citizens.
Exactly.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's exactly what Councilwoman Jackson
'Cause I'm struggling
specifically.
with it.
Well, and that's what Councilwoman Jackson said in detail at a previous city council meeting. Is there's a lot of senior citizens who struggle with accessibility, who don't even necessarily know or are told by the city what district they're in, and so. If we already have these big deficiencies at engaging and helping the public, and now we throw at them a really complicated. And I want to be clear, I'm personally not against ranked choice voting in principle. I actually think it's worked out quite well in different places. I think the Alaska and New York City examples, although they're very different places, have actually done a pretty good job at providing the public with not only access but options. But again, what's the difference? Salisbury has not really had a situation where ranked choice voting would ever even be used. The only exception is the last mayoral race. And I have to think, again, it's a New York thing maybe, it's a cynicalness to it, but like this seems to be for political purposes solely based on trying to maybe get people in the mayoral seat or in city council seats for certain groups in the upcoming election, rather than really addressing issues. That's my thought on it, just looking at it from...
Again, I mean, even the mayor recognized that one of council meetings. He looked right at Blake and Greg and says, I try not to get personal, but clearly this is aimed at me, and it's ridiculous.
And I guess the point becomes then, are people in the city going to approach it from a partisan lens and say, you know what, I'm a Democrat, so yeah, whatever keeps a Republican off, that's what we'll do, or vice versa. I think, this opens up us to the kind of partisanship and politicization locally that we've always struggled to push back on.
Right, and I'm I've been here 6 years, and I'm impressed with the nonpartisanship of the voting process. There's no primaries, whoever registers as a candidate, they run in the general. Right. And it's really up to the candidate to get their vote out.
Yeah.
So that 18% we've talked about, the only way you're going to improve that is for the candidates to, door knock and get their vote.
I think until the city's high rental rates are addressed, and the fact that the public engagement in general, as we've talked about, has been very apathetic, until those two things are addressed, I don't know how you even go forward with something that's much more complicated, convoluted, and expensive, particularly for people, as you said, Trish, that are, maybe historically going to struggle with trying to figure that new process out. So it's something that I think we're going to keep our eye on. I personally don't think it has much of a future based on the last council meeting. I
don't either.
Yeah. Now, it might be used as a tool for others running in the future, but I don't see it happening at any point in the next year or two, at least before the next city council election.
I hope not.
I agree.
Okay. Well, great. Well, we're going to bring in another friend of the show, another person with a little bit of an outside perspective to sort of see how a county resident sees this current debate. So I'm going to bring in Mike Goldberg again, and Mike's going to give us his thoughts about it and see sort of how he responded to that information that you've presented. So thank you so much. Folks, stick around. We'll be right back with our next segment of Open Agenda. Welcome back to Open Agenda. Back in the house with us is our friend from Delmar, Mr. Mike Goldberg. Mike, I got to ask, you saw one slightly less handsome Joe give a nice factual presentation about the voter data and the trajectory of the elections. What do you think about this whole ranked choice voting proposal?
I think it's convoluting what should be a simple, straightforward process. I see absolutely no need for ranked choice voting.
Okay.
None whatsoever.
So do you agree that it's politically motivated, or are there good intentions behind it, but maybe people are just sort of not knowing their audience and not realizing the nature of the challenges we already have in Salisbury?
Candidly, when you consider what the makeup is of the city council, I don't think there's any good intentions there. I think that there is a lot of pie in the sky aspirations. They think that this is going to make it better, just as they, believe that having to buy bags at the grocery store is going to save the planet. I just don't buy this at all. I think that it is politically motivated, and I think we're dealing with some very extraordinarily political animals, and the city council president and at least one of the other members.
Well, that's what's interesting too, because you really can't parse it up in a partisan way, right? Because you've got both Democrats and Republicans on the council, at least the majority, that don't seem to be going along with it. Obviously, the mayor and his relations to Council President Blake and Gregory have very big political partisan connotations. But to your point, it doesn't really seem to be applicable in a place that, at least in theory, is not officially partisan. And as we've sort of indicated with Joe's information, it just doesn't have any basis in fact in terms of what it would do to increase those, I think, embarrassingly low numbers of voter turnout.
Well, I understand the impulse. Anything I've read indicates it's, in theory, more fair and promotes more engagement. It's just, as a practical matter, I'm concerned.
Yeah.
For minority populations, statistically, there's been studies that show that they may not participate as much.
I have heard that, and in fact, I believe both Councilwoman Jackson and Jermichael Mitchell have both publicly stated that at recent meetings, that they are concerned that this would actually have a more negative effect on the minority populations, which are already historically not voting at rates that are comparable to other groups.
Well, the participation rates of voting in Salisbury are extraordinarily low. Why would we do anything that would further suppress participation?
So let me ask this question, and it's a kind of a provocative one, but I'm going to ask it because I've talked to a few people involved in city politics, and I think there's a belief that this ranked choice voting is literally, to your point, the exact opposite of what some of those canned emails indicate, that it actually is almost designed to create a more a smaller but engaged group of people who could sort of be the kingmakers, as it were, in city elections, because it will drive away people that are more casual voters because of the perception that it's more convoluted. I don't necessarily buy that it's more complicated, but I can understand the argument that if you have a multi-step process in a ranked choice vote, that the idea would be, well, the people that we know who are going to come out for us, we'll tell them what to do.
Well, I just think it makes the whole process more intimidating to voters. And I believe in the KISS principle: keep it simple, stupid. And this is a system that I think is very streamlined. What we have in the city of Salisbury, particularly since it's nonpartisan, and I love that. I love the fact that it's nonpartisan, even though the city of Salisbury is predominantly Democrat. But one thing I think we've all discovered: look, I'm on the right side of the equation, and yet we have found so much common ground at the local level. At the national level, we may want to cut each other's hearts out. But at the local level, we want the same things. We want good schools. We want, effective public safety. We don't want to spend ourselves into oblivion. We're all united by that. So I love having the nonpartisan elections in Salisbury.
Well, and doesn't taking the letter away also do something else, because it forces people to look at the actual candidates and the platforms? Because otherwise you're getting into a point where you're saying, okay, well, I'm just going to be dismissive of that person because I see a D or I see an R. And it kind of gives that incentive to the voter to be like, what does...
But what we found, that letter after the name doesn't really matter when it comes to local politics.
No, but...
Except if you want it to matter.
That's kind of my point, is that are some groups or individuals pushing it because they do want it to matter more than it should?
I think so.
And that's...
I think so.
Yeah, and
I don't presume to know what anybody's motivations are.
Yeah.
So I won't.
Okay.
I just don't like the idea.
Yeah.
For Salisbury.
Yeah. Well, and again, I don't think it's going to be a reality, but what I would hope is that in this moment where there is this debate about the nature of elections, I would at least hope that the city council actually addresses the thing that people have talked about a lot,
Right.
which is the appointment process. Because it seems to me that at least at this point you have a majority of people on the city council who have said on record, we need to change the appointment process. And what I'm curious to see is, will the current city council president, Angela Blake, and will Michelle Gregory, will they agree to go forward with changing the appointment process, even if they know that they're not going to get the ranked choice voting reform, which they clearly want?
I think that they will only do it if they have to.
That-
Because look, this gives few individuals on the council an enormous amount of power to be able to decide, who is going to represent people in whatever district it is in the event of a vacancy. I think it's anti-democratic. It takes the power away from the people. We're supposed to be self-governing. We're supposed to be able to select who is going to represent us in government. But when you have representatives who represent somebody else telling you who's going to represent you, I've got a problem with that. I really think they need to quickly address a better system, a more democratic system for filling vacancies.
Yeah, understood. Well, I think we're going to find that answer out sooner rather than later, because it seems to be something that's going to be coming up quite soon. So we'll keep our eyes on that, and hopefully we'll be able to inform the public when it does happen, if it does happen. So,
Yes, sir.
thank you both for coming.
Of course.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, folks, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Open Agenda. Take care. We've only just begun.